Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Cardboard Herald's Off the Table, your Monday morning tabletop gaming news, community, and questions in 10 minutes or less. As always, I'm your host, Jack, and let's get this show started. First news item is that Gen Con has announced pop-up Gen Con. They're teaming up with Alliance Distribution in order to bring you a taste of the convention scene in your local town. This is going to be a system where they're sending out convention materials, pre-release games to your friendly local game stores. There's not a lot of details about how this is going to roll out, but I actually think this is a great way of supporting brick and mortar shops, as well as making sure that everyone who can't necessarily travel to conventions has access to them. Who knows? We might have our own pop-up Gen Con here in Juneau, Alaska someday. Then Dice Tower is shopping around a board game talk show called Above Board. We got a little preview of this, and Tom is describing it as like a Top Gear of board games, and it looks to be kind of like a variety show type of thing, and apparently they are shopping it around to different channels or maybe streaming avenues. It takes a lot of audacity to try to bring something as niche as board games to mainstream TV, but hey, board games are growing, and if anyone has that mainstream name recognition cachet, it's the Dice Tower, so good luck for them, and maybe we'll see the Cardboard Herald on Netflix here soon. Our last news item is kind of weird. This is where Williams LLC was trying to bring you a Game of Thrones, the totally legit, not fake Kickstarter, the card game. This was kind of funny and kind of sad, depending on how you looked at it to start with, because it was either a prank or it was someone who had delusions of grandeur, because this game looked totally bogus. It had terrible artwork, terrible presentation. Supposedly it had support of every single Game of Thrones cast member, and you could get signatures, and the price points were unrealistic. Some people thought it was sincere, some people thought it was a joke, and there were people actually backing it. There were people withdrawing their backing, and it fluctuated in price constantly, and there were arguments in the comments. But then it kind of broke bad, and supposedly, I didn't actually get to see it, but the creator had some videos on a video channel where they were streaming video games, and they were yelling at their wife and kids or other family members to the point of where it seemed abusive, and police reports got made, and it just got nasty and gross, and it's since been suspended. Nonetheless, the point that I'm trying to make is that Kickstarter needs to have clear and consistent guidance in what is expected of the people who are creating things on Kickstarter, and exercising some oversight over that. And for the audience out there, be wary. Use this as a red flag, a wake-up call, in order to think about what it is that you're backing. Is this a realistic project, and is the creator someone who realistically could make this product come true? And is it a company that you feel good about supporting? Those are all things that we, as the backers on Kickstarter, putting our money towards a project, should be thinking about. Heading over into announcements, we have PAX Renaissance Collectors Edition coming in 2020, and this is going to include that expansion, the card expansion that everyone's been looking for, and so the bottom's probably going to drop out of the secondhand market on that, and upgraded pieces. This is like a Phil Eklund classic at this point, a modern classic, so I imagine people are going to go crazy for this. And speaking of going crazy for things, Roxley has announced Dice Throne Adventure. This is separate from Dice Throne Season 3. It's an expansion that's going to have a fully cooperative mode and possibly some campaign elements. I know people love Dice Throne. And then Plaid Hat announced Battlelands. Now, this is interesting because anyone who's watched any substantial amount of this channel knows I love paw and claw fantasy stuff with little critters and swords and axes and sorcery and all that kind of stuff. And that's what this game is. But Plaid Hat also makes Mice and Mystics and Tail Feathers, which was set in the Mice and Mystics world. But this apparently is set in the upcoming Aftermath book game universe, which is distinctly not the Mice and Mystics world. So I don't know if they're going to have parallel paw and claw fantasy critter genre games, or they're just going to have this new line and they're saying goodbye to the Mice and Mystics thing. I don't know. It's kind of confusing, but the game looks really cute, so there's that. And then finally, Paizo is bringing you Pathfinder, the adventure card game core set. Yeah, this is the game that came out in 2013, except now like the entry set that is going to kind of reset the whole brand for them. If anything, it sounds more like a second edition where they're trying to tie everything together, make it more accessible, but apparently everything else is going to be fully compatible with it, so that's good news if you're heavily invested. It's coming out at the end of May, and I'm really looking forward to checking out this one, so if I get a copy, I will surely be doing a review. So for our highlight today, I've been thinking a lot about good visual design and user interface in board games, right? Because there are games that are absolutely gorgeous from a purely artistic standpoint, but it's hard to glean any real information without like close study. On the other hand, there are very complex games that have spent a ton of time in making their game just so that it's easy to, at a glance, understand where everyone is in relation to one another, what sorts of information is out there, and that becomes more and more important as I do more and more reviews of games. And because I know that this was a key point for Stone Circle as they were manufacturing Battle for Biternia, I asked Jon from Stone Circle Games to come on and tell us about the importance of good visual design.
Thanks, Jack. Look, everyone has their own preferences when it comes to games. There's so many games and so many styles to choose from. One thing I think we can all agree on is that games should be fun. To me, the thing that really distinguishes a good game from a great one is the way the components, the learning process, and the theme all blend together to make it fun top to bottom. Fun to look at, fun to play, fun to pick up and interact with, and fun to talk about afterwards. As a developer, I think about this a lot because I want my players to have fun even when they're not actively playing the game, even when it's not their turn. I look to examples like Scythe. Amazing board, beautiful table presence, and the board conveys a lot of information very quickly. But my favorite part of that game is the player board. It's a player aid. It reminds you of what the actions are and the order you can take them. You pull out pieces and add them to the board, changing your board. You can watch the player board grow and evolve over the course of the game. And to me, that's really fun. Just playing around and moving those components is incredibly fun and also intuitive and teaches you the game as you go. A test I like to use when developing a game like Battle for Biternia is to see what players do and spend their time on when they're not actually playing the game. For Biternia, there's a lot of time spent asking questions about hit points. How many hit points are left in that hero? We used to have piles of wound tokens you have to count and look at. So when we worked on developing this game, making it more fun, more intuitive, we integrated all that information into the board as much as possible. For the heroes, we have little sliders that are fun to move up and down, and you can quickly look across the table and see how many hit points does that hero have. Is he almost dead, or is he something I need to run away from? For the towers and the bit, we integrated the hit points into a little dial built into the board. This lets you look across, and instead of asking how many hit points, you can see, well, that tower is strong, that tower is weak, and you go right back to planning your battle strategy and really focus on what you're doing as opposed to asking questions about numbers. I obviously love thinking about these things, but I'm curious to hear what you think. What are your favorite components to pick up and interact with? How can components help you learn and get into the feel of the game?
You know, I reviewed the prototype for Battle for Biternia back in the day, and it is fast, it is fun, it's aggressive, but more than anything, man, if you have any affinity for like old school console RPGs, which I do, then that is a game you definitely want to check out. So thank you so much to Jon for coming on to the show. If you want to learn more about Battle for Biternia, you can find links to Stone Circle Games at the description below. And that is going to bring us to questions. And our question is Jon's question. What are some games that you think are stellar examples of fantastic visual design? You know, good readability, things that you can just look at and understand all of the information, see through the matrix in just a glance. And if you have any examples of something doing the opposite of that, well, I'm not going to blame you if you put some mention in the comments below. So thank you so much for watching the Cardboard Herald's Off the Table. As always, we'll be doing these things weekly. If you have any feedback, let us know. Continue sharing, talking about, mentioning things in the comments, telling people about it online. I love seeing all the discussion. I love seeing all the support. And more than anything, I love talking to you. So thanks again. I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald, and I'll talk to you next week. If you enjoyed this video, we have all kinds of other reviews, interviews, and recommendations via writing, podcast, and video here on our channel and website cardboardherald.com. Our content is audience supported, so if you want to show your support, please visit our Patreon. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the Cardboard Herald.